Jim Morrison, singer.
The Doors.
L.A., San Francisco, all up and down the coast. West Coast. West is best.
The Doors. The Unconscious.
The gap is getting wider, day by day.
The Doors.
The band you love to hate.
Strange days.
Death.
Rebellion, chaos, disorder, and activity that appears to have no meaning. A central theme or a motif, a thread running through the songs we don't have, but we definitely do have generate an atmosphere or a mood which might be characterized as an awareness of the strange, that something's wrong, something's not quite right. Jim Morrison, the old are getting older and the young are getting somewhere.
The Doors.
How long do we want to go on playing?
I've discovered a book on sale at this festival called The Doors Songbook, which appears to be a pirated version of all the words of all the albums, including the new one. What do you reckon about that? Do you think that's a good idea? Or?
Well, I don't mind if they got all the words spelled right. A lot of times they really screw up the meaning. Just one word or one semicolon will ruin the whole thing.
Right. Do you approve then of having your lyrics on the back of your albums or on the inside sleeve? Because in England I think 2 of them have had the lyrics and 3 haven't. Do you think it makes a difference? I mean, we didn't have the words The Unknown Soldier, for example, which...
Yeah, they really got botched up. Yeah. I don't think it matters one way or the other. I don't think it's necessary, but...
I mean, you don't mind that somebody's making some bread out of your words?
No, what harm could it do?
Oh, right, it'll only... If people buy it, then they'll know your words, I suppose. Is this the first festival of this sort you played?
Yeah, it is.
How do you find it? I mean, the chaos and the devastation and the... You know, it's okay in here, but I mean, have you been outside? And...
Well, it's kind of hard walking around out there. I did get back around the campsites a little bit. This one seems to be pretty well organized for such a huge event.
Oh, yeah.
And, I didn't have a good time last night because I had to perform and I just got off a plane and all that.
Yeah, right.
But tonight I came back and I can see why people like it. I think all these people say that the huge festivals are over, they're dead and all that. I think they're wrong. I think that it's going to become increasingly significant in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, when I talked to some cats who came back from Woodstock, like Clive Selwood, you know, the Electra English guy, he said it was terrible. You know, it was such devastation, and so, you know, all these people who were filthy and hadn't eaten anything for days, and you know, he said, and then now they made the film, and everybody says, wow, you know, beautiful revolution, and you know.
I'm sure that these things get highly romanticized, but and I was kind of that opinion myself when I saw the film about Woodstock. It just seemed like a bunch of young parasites being kind of spoon-fed this 3 or 4 days of thinking. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
They look like victims and dupes of a culture rather than anything. But then I think that may have been sour grapes because I wasn't there, you know, not even as a spectator. So I think even though they are a mess and even though they are not what they pretend to be, some free celebration of a young culture, it's still better than nothing.
Oh, right, it's better than nothing, but...
And I'm sure that some of the people take away a kind of, you know, a kind of myth back to the city with them, and it'll affect them.
Yeah, I presume that you don't believe in this revolution business that is being spoken about, as if, you know, we're all going to go back to London and take over the Houses of Parliament and... all
I don't
seems very
think-
unreal to me, you know.
That would. Well, okay, I don't want to say too much because I haven't studied politics that much, but it just seems like you have to be in a constant state of revolution or you're dead. You know, so you know there always has to be a revolution. It has to be a constant thing, not something that's going to change things and then that's it. You know, the revolution solved everything. It has to be every day.
Yeah, I figure that you've got to convince people gradually to change, not sort of say, you know, pow, we're coming in and we're like the Black Panthers and all this. I mean, that...
But there have to be Black Panthers too, you know.
Oh yeah, to keep people reasonable.
They have to change too. They have to become leopards, you know, someday, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like it. Well, let's can we get on a bit of music?
Right.
You played mostly tracks off your first two albums last night. Why was that? Because you felt that we'd know those better?
No, we'd know them better.
Right. You don't do many gigs at that rate then?
Yeah, we do, but never anything like this. I don't think that our particular music style holds up very well in a huge outdoor event. I think we're the particular kind of magic that we can breed when we do. When it works best in a small theater.
Like the last time you came to England?
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah, right. I saw the last set, you know, when the dawn was breaking on the Saturday, and it's incredible, you know.
I thought that was one of the best concerts we've ever done.
I was talking to the guy this morning who made the film, and I said,
Which one?
The Doors...
No, I know, but which guy?
Jeffrey Cannon. He's a writer for a very straight paper called The Guardian, and he said that they were trying to put over the immediacy of rock rather than the Doors, and I said, well, I think you should have been trying to put over the Doors because the sound recording was really shitty, you know, it was very bad. All the people I said, watch it, because this is really something.
However, I thought the film was very exciting, and to be on television, I thought it was incredible.
Yeah.
The thing is, the guys that made the film had a thesis of what their film was going to be before we even came over. You know, we were going to be the political rock group, you know, and it also gave them a chance to whip out some of their anti-American sentiments, you know, which they thought we represented, you know. And so they had their whole film before we came over.
Yeah.
But I still think they made a very exciting film.
It is better. I taped it actually, and it's good to listen to it actually because, you know, all this bit about people trying to get into hospitals and National Guardsmen stopping them is all very nice, but it doesn't bear the, you know, when you were on at the Roundhouse, there was something. It was amazing, you know, that all the people sort of sitting there. It was so crowded. It was much worse than this, because it was an enclosed space, you know, and there was a queue of 2,000 people waiting to get in at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, a ridiculous scene. Which, why haven't you been since then, by the way?
I guess we've been too busy, and there didn't seem to be that much demand. I mean, we couldn't go back to the Roundhouse, and it didn't seem to. It should have been a step forward, and there just didn't seem to be any real.
No. Well, the Roundhouse is no longer an auditorium in the same way it was then.
Is there now? Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right.
That seems strange place for that to be.
Well, they put seats in it, and you know, it's they charge a fortune for them and all the rest.
Yeah, that was a beautiful scene.
Oh, right, yeah, well, everybody seems to... the straight press were very pissed off with it because they didn't understand it too well, you know. They're putting it on in a big, a proper theatre now.
No, I mean the 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
The way the Roundhouse was kind of
incredible, yeah.
Penny theatre kind of.
It was really nice. It was, you know, a sort of thing that one remembers for years and years, and this is why I wondered why you hadn't been sort of since, because
well, that's the reason. There just wasn't. We were busy, and also there just didn't seem to be any real demand for it.
Oh, wow.
What's the name of the magazine you guys put out?
Zigzag.
I've seen it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fame
right.
indeed.
How many do you publish?
20,000 a month. You know, to people who we hope will want to know about what good music is, not, you know, not what's top of the charts or anything, that sort of thing.
I'd like to start a magazine newspaper thing in LA sometime. I think the trouble is if you try and do it to sell copies and get into advertising and all that, then you can't.
Well, you lose all your enthusiasm if you have to hustle things that you don't want to do. I mean, we work to. We occasionally have to please somebody so that they'll look after us, you know, so we can keep printing, really. You know, we owe the printer some amazing amount of bread, and we have done since we started, but the printer doesn't seem to mind because it hasn't got any more.
Wouldn't LA be rather a difficult market with so many publications?
Well, that's it. I'd only do it if I could just finance it myself, so I wouldn't have to advertise and all that. You know those little one-issue things the Surrealists and Dadaists used to put out?
Yeah, right.
Manifestos and all that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, look, an actual movie. Oh, that's beautiful. It looks like a priest going to these.
It's Mr. Hendricks, of course. Do you think, in view of what you've done, that you will do a tour now?
Well, we had planned one here. We had planned to do one after this, 8 or 9 places in Europe, including Italy and Switzerland and Paris and that kind of thing. I have to go back to this trial in Miami, because I'm in the middle of that, so it blew the whole trip.
So, you know, that is such a drag as far as we're all concerned.
I thought it was going to be, but it's actually a very fascinating thing to go through.
Yeah.
And to observe.
I talked to Jack, and he said that it was going on so long now that you know, perhaps nothing would ever be done about it, because it would go to appeals and appeals and appeals. But the trouble is, if it keeps you sort of in a position where you can't get out of the country for too long, it's a drag for us here. You know.
No, I think maybe we'll come back next spring, March, April. That's a good time of year. Right?
That would be incredible. Are you happy with the live album?
Yeah, I like it.
We haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, it's just been released here. I think it's a true document of one of our good concerts.
Yeah.
You know, it's not insanely good, but it's a true portrait of what we usually can do on a good night.
Right. Well, this is something we've only seen twice. You know?
Well, I think you'll like it.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've really dug all the others. So, I heard that your favourite album was The Soft Parade. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I don't have a favorite. I think my favorite is, besides the live one, is Morrison Hotel.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. You know, that was a night getting back to the first two, perhaps it seemed to me. But you know, was that
just in the respect that we didn't use any other musicians on it, except the bass player.
Yeah.
That was the main.
Lonnie Mack?
But it wasn't a conscious attempt to get back to anything.
No. No, well, you know, it was publicised a bit like that here, but which is perhaps unfair, because the first album, you know, is an epic which Ian and I and everybody else we know play quite continually, even now. I'm on my 3rd copy of it, I wore out to it.
Yeah.
But it's really, you know, that's a
terrible.
record.
That's like a novelist's first novel, no one ever lets them forget it. You know?
Oh, yeah, I believe it, but, you know...
Why don't you write them like, look, Homer Angel, you know?
Oh no, I believe that you're progressing. I mean, I thought Morrison Hotel was a knockout because the Soft Parade disappointed me in places. I thought the track, The Soft Parade, was nice. And
It kind of got out of control and it took too long and it was spread over about 9 months and it just got out of hand.
Yeah.
There was no an album should have like a book of stories or something. It should have some kind of unified feeling or style about it, and that's what that was.
Yeah. Are you happy with Elektra?
Yeah, it's been a good relationship.
Because I'm an Elektra freak. I've got about 70 Elektra albums, some of which are terrible, in fact. You know, the Holy Mode Rounders and things.
Now that they've become part of corporation, it'll be interesting to see if the company gets better or if they kind of get bye-bye, or if it gets assimilated. I think hopefully it might give them a chance not to worry about competing in the popular field and do the thing that they do best, which is classical, experimental, electronic things, folk things, giving a chance to people that, you know, haven't really a chance to be commercially successul in their own time. So maybe this will give them a chance to get back to that.
Yeah, right, because that's what they became known for.
I think with us it was just really a freak thing. They've never repeated that.
Well, he saw you when he came to see Love, didn't he? That's the story.
And they had Love, and someone associated with them brought someone in to see us. And that's actually kind of nice. Because if Love was a very the popular underground group in LA at that time, and we figured, well, if they went on Elektra, it must be a good label.
Yeah, because Jack said to me yesterday that Arthur Lee sort of was paternalizing about the Doors. You know, he said, I was there when you found the Doors, Jack, and wow. And then you got famous, and he didn't.
Yeah, in a way that's true. I think it's too bad about Love. Incredible. Well, it's really Arthur Lee, I suppose, because although the first Love group was a very, very great group,
Yeah.
but I don't think they weren't willing to travel and to go through all the games and numbers that you have to do to get it out to a large number of people. If they'd done that, I think they could have been as big as anyone. And someday they will.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go here.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much for your time.
And good luck.
I think music and poetry are a free activity, almost like child's play, and I think that's a good way to move through life, is playing rather than working at it too hard, because if there was more music, if more people were playing, I think things would be a lot easier, it'd be a lot smoother, maybe. He'd be making films or writing plays, but if there were no problems, he'd still be making films. I think he just likes what he's doing, I think he just has fun making films.
Can we talk about the role of the police in America at your concerts? Do the line of policemen in fact become a part of the theatre?
Yeah, it's a real drama. You get a triangle situation: the audience and the police and the stage. And when you don't have that, when you just have a dialogue, it's just like a conversation between two people,
Is it easier in a triangle situation?
I better get that. No one's here. Would somebody get that and see us down there? Well, usually I look on it as, a bunch of uniformed officers lined up in front of the audience. I think it's it does turn it into something that it's not intended to be. I think it's an incitement.
Is that something that you can make use of?
If you find yourself in a situation, you just have to go with it.
So tell us about New Haven.
Well, that whole story was reported pretty accurately. I mean, it was. I'm sure you know the whole thing. It was just like it was reported. Just. I think in that case, if I'd known beforehand that New Haven had a history of things like that, I would have been more skillful in coping with it. But to me, it was just another town, that I'd heard the name, but I didn't know anything about it. and they have like a history of that kind of incident.
You say that the police are an incitement. They would say that you, Jim Morrison, are an incitement.
I was only, actually I was charged with, I don't even know if they said incitement. I think it was giving immoral or indecent exhibition or something like that. And that's a little different, you know.
Do you have any defense against the accusations of being an incitement?
The charges were dropped, so obviously it was a mistake, you know.
Why do you think some people think your act is immoral and obscene?
I think that was in one of the songs I related an incident that had happened backstage before the concert involving a police officer, and I think it was the fact that I was pointing out their existence, you know, kind of talking about them in a performance, and I guess they thought it was trespassing the bounds of art and reality or something. I think that was it.
What about Columbia, Maryland?
Usual town, though, you know, it's not like that. You know, that's the only time anything like that has happened, because most of the places that I've played, and maybe it's since that incident, maybe they've just, I don't know, maybe they've been bending over backwards, but the police that I've talked to and had any kind of dealings with have gone out of their way to be gentlemen, you know.
You talk about trespassing the bounds of art and reality. Do you actually consciously think of that, or do you think of it as just art?
I wouldn't have done it that night, except that I was a little indignant about the way I'd been treated. I thought it was unjustified, you know, and I was still, you know, a little bit turned on by what had happened, so it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a song anymore. It was really, I was just kind of giving vent to a very personal feelings of the moment, rather than, putting on a performance. I was actually, what would you call it? I was just letting out some very personal feelings that I had. Well, I don't like it when people in the audience start trying to be the performers, you know. I always disliked that, you know. I mean, that has its place, you know. At a love-in or something, but or a party or something. But if people come to see you perform a work of art, then I think they should, you know, they've come to see it, and they should, you know, let you do what you're supposed to do. You know, if someone, it would depend. It would depend if someone in the audience. Yeah, because I want to say this. I want to clarify that. I felt for a long time that somehow we're all afflicted these days with the psychology of the voyeur, and not in a strictly clinical or criminal sense, but in our whole emotional and moral stance before the world. And anytime we try to break out of that bound of passivity, our actions usually seem awkward and obscene, like an invalid that's forgotten how to walk.
However, so I don't like a separation between actors and spectators, because I'm against that. I don't think there should be a separation at all. But you find in reality that if a person in the audience jumps up or just sits in his seat and shouts something out, and it's not good, if it's just, if it's stupid, or like if you get to them, if you affect them, but what they come out with is something petty, then I think they should be put down. Or if someone jumped up on stage and tried to take away the microphone, well, if they were good at it, and looked good and had something to say and did it good with style, I think I'd let them do it. But if it was some drunk or some idiot, just trying to expose himself for a few seconds without anything really to say or do, I'd shove him back into the pit.
But at recent concerts, you went down into the audience.
Went down there because I didn't think we were getting to them somehow. I thought we were playing very good at a very high level of energy, and I thought that they were, I felt too much of a separation. So I wanted to see whether I could kind of break it down a little bit, Didn't work too well. No, it wasn't just, I just like to see if anyone has anything to say, I think the reason why the second sets were much more exciting both nights, I think it was the presence of the TV crews on stage and in the hall. I think it kind of, it's that voyeurism thing. It's like it introduces an objective element that turns people off to a real communion. With hidden cameras, maybe. People are aware of them. And even if they were hidden, I think somehow they'd be aware, because it would have to be hidden from the performers and from their knowledge, too. You see? Because if I know I'm being filmed, there's a barrier between what I really want to say if we were just talking, even more than if we were just talking, there'd still be a barrier. But that's what because the second sets, both nights, were fantastic. The first ones. So I just wanted I guess what I wanted to do was just say, forget that you're an audience and we're up here, and that forget all the surrounding publicity and that we've come over here to play and you've never seen us. Just we're here to have fun. Didn't work though. It's because it was already in the atmosphere. Yeah, they I don't know. Sometimes it's I don't know. I guess it's when you get a lot of younger kids, they're more free, and they're a little, I don't know. This is the wrong word, but they're a little crazier, and they have a little less fear, not just of physical violence, but they have less fear of how they'll look to other people, how their behavior will come across to their friends or something. Would you get that and just take a message or something? Thanks. So, sometimes in the States you get, kids charging on the stage and all that, and you get a real surge of emotion. Like, they weren't aware of, they were hearing it for the first time, and they were really listening, soaking up every word, every nuance, every gesture. And so it was satisfying to me, because I was able to give a more, what I thought was a more perfect, more real performance. I enjoyed it. I didn't feel I had to act, and exaggerate, because they were watching. It was a small place,
Everyone was quiet and sitting, and instead of having to leap around and run around to be seen, all it would take would just be that much, you know? Or just change the voice a little bit. It's great. I imagine, I don't know what it's going to be like in the rest of Europe. I think it's going to be great because they've never seen us, you know.
Where do you think you're going musically?
I think the musicians are just, they keep learning, they get better and better. They know their instruments more and more. And I learn how to sing better every time, you know. And I have more to say. The more you experience and travel and learn, the more you can get into the short time you have to say something. So I think it'll just get deeper and deeper. Something specific. This trip to Europe is really gonna charge the music a lot. I think it's done a lot for everybody, you know. Because, you know, if you just living in one country all your life, you don't realize that there's the rest of the world, you know. You know it. Like I expected London to be black and white, like kind of a gray, black, like you see in photographs or in movies, you know. Most English movies are real gray, you know, and kind of foggy. You get there's a few coming out now that are, but, you know, even the ones in color, you get this kind of a, but then you get here and it has just as much color as anywhere, you know, so that's good.
My name is Jim of The Doors. That's what I just said. It ought to be a lot of fun. You know, unasked for. They just pop out of the unconscious. The bigger, the better. Sensuous, evil, a mood of mystery and strangeness, and also a little bit of religion thrown in there too. The group began practicing in a place called Venice in Los Angeles. It's a beach town. With the atmosphere of a dying arcade. And then our first job was a Christmas party. At a house, a relative of Robbie's. Then our first job was at the London Fog on Sunset Strip. And we were there it was a small club that no longer exists. And the most people it could hold, I'd say, would be about 50. Maybe on a good night there could be about 50 people. There was a bartender named George, a doorman named Sam, sometimes Joey would be at the door, a waitress named Susie, and a dancer named Rhonda, who danced in a little rope cage across from the bandstand. Jesse James was the owner. He was a young man, but he was dying of cancer, and it was kind of a struggle to keep the place going. In an intimate club atmosphere, you can be more subtle and more intimate. In a large arena, you have to be more theatrical, but they're both interesting. I like playing any place where we're the headliners and there's a large crowd of enthusiastic people to watch us. What's the difference? You're not aware of individuals as much as in a smaller place. In a smaller place, you can see individuals, you know. In a large place, you can't, all you see is a mass. That's the big difference.
It's nice of you to come over on a rainy day like this, the rainy season. I was in New Orleans about 2 months ago, and I thought it was a beautiful town, very strange, and I had a lot of fun there. I was thinking about New Orleans last night. There's a bar called Bonaparte's. They have a fantastic mural done by a young artist who doesn't live in the city anymore. It's a picture of Napoleon in exile. And he's kind of sulking in this field, and there's a sword stuck in the ground in front of him. And then over to the left is scenes from the some kind of no, it's a war scene and people in sewers, and it's chaos and all that, and ghosts and shades, and it's a beautiful mural. I can't get it out of my mind, actually. A friend and I went to Atlanta for a film festival. We had a film aired there, and then we drove from Atlanta to New Orleans. It was a little 40-minute documentary on a rock and roll band traveling around the States. We shot about a year ago. One thing I do remember, Atlanta has the most amazing hotel you've ever seen. You walk in, and from the outside it looks like any other large hotel. And you get in and you look up, and it goes up about 27 floors, and the interior is like a Spanish courtyard. I mean, in architecturally, it's hollow. So all the rooms face each other across this vast garden arena. And the elevators are like kind of Victorian rocket ships, and they're glass. And so you get this strange sensation, you know, rising up 27 floors in this glass elevator. Somebody jumped and landed, and they have a restaurant in the middle of it, and someone landed in the restaurant, and I hear it was really horrible. I don't know why the South has such a reputation, like, you know, but maybe these cliches are really true after all. I never really noticed that the South was any worse than any other part of the United States. Of course, I'm from there, you know, so I might be prejudiced, but I think it's a grotesque caricature. However, it is a strange territory. You bet. Why, I don't know. How come I don't have an accent, being from the South and all? Well, I watch a lot of television, and I try and obey the norm, you know. That's what you know, people in the Midwest and the South and they call it, like the way people in California talk, they call it TV talk. You know, it's the way people talk on television, newscasters and commercials and actors and all that. It's TV talk. I think it's more fun, you know, with a lot of people around. Recording studios tend to get a little dry and monotonous. Yeah, I guess the real fun is in performing. Well, we have a repertoire of 30 or 40 tunes, and so we usually plan, like in the dressing room before we go on, we usually plan, you know, the first 3 or 4 songs, and then after that we just play it by ear. So we don't really know what we're going to do when we go out there. Usually we rehearse a couple of weeks, a month or so, until we have a considerable amount of material, and then we go in and do it. We don't. Well, on this new album, it's really strange. It went really quick. We went in and we got like a song a day, which is kind of unusual. It was funny. The first album that we did in about 10 days, and then each succeeding album took longer and longer until the last one took about 9 months to do. And this one, we went in and we got a song a day. It was amazing. Partly because we went back to the original instrumentation, just the four of us and a bass player. I think that phrase is the most horrible phrase in the English language. I don't know. It's terribly embarrassing. No, we joke around about it a lot, but actually, we just do an album, and then every time we make a choice for a single, it usually turns out wrong. It's usually and so what we're going to do on this one is just put out the album, and let the public decide which one they like the best, and then we'll release that as a single. Mm-hmm. Seems like the most realistic way to do it. I don't think we really have the key to the pulse of the nation, because we've made more mistakes than we've been right. I think, oh, by the way, I remembered the name of that guy. It was Eric von Stroheim, the man you love to hate. Yeah. I think we're the band you love to hate. So it's been that way from the beginning. We're universally despised. I kind of relish the whole situation. Gee, I don't know. I guess, anyway, I think it's like, I was just up in San Francisco for another film festival, this Feast of Friends, this film. And it was an audience that consisted mainly of young people, way under 30. Hip young people, street people. And they booed the film. And I think it's that we're on a monstrous ego trip, and people resent it. They hate us because we're so good. I think maybe it will change. I think what it is, it's a question of longevity. It's like it's that old thing, like a first novel. They usually give the cat a break, and everybody kind of pats him on the back. And then the second one, they really chop him up. And then if he does a few more, and shows he has staying power, then, they say, well, welcome back to the fold. The human family embraces you. And I think it'd be the same way with us. We just have to hold out for a while, and everyone, one day will realize, wow, they're just like old friends. They've been around for years now, and, they're part of our national psyche. I guess we'll just, accept them, but now it's, kind of in between. I just think the music keeps getting better and better. It gets more subtle and more sophisticated, musically and lyrically. Besides, if you keep saying the same old thing over and over, it's bound to get boring, right? Who wants to hear revolution 24 hours a day? That song, I wrote that very early about 3 years ago. If you listen to the lyrics, you know, maybe it's the arrangement. I like it. Hello, I love you. Won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you. Let me jump in your game. She's walking down the street, blind to every eye she meets. Do you think you'll be the guy to make the queen of the angels sigh? Forget the rest of it. Anyway, do you hope to pluck this dusky jewel? I would, you know, I wouldn't say that's such a bad lyric. Yep, we're just full of surprises. Can I have some more coffee, Kathy? You make the best coffee. Well, the only time I listen to music is on car radios when I'm driving around. You know, top 40 stuff. I don't listen to music that much. Every now and then I'll catch an act in public somewhere. I saw, when I was in Vegas, I saw Peggy Lee and, what was that other band? I forget. They were, you know, I'll go to clubs every now and then, but I don't listen to music that much. I'm not what you'd call a music buff. I don't read very much either. I used to, and then life got so interesting that I didn't need to anymore. I don't do much of anything, really. But I will, don't worry. I'll get back in the saddle, you know. I've just been kind of lazy lately. It's cycles of non-productiveness and then intense periods of creativity. So right now I'm just soaking it all in. I did do one thing. I just completed a short feature movie, 35 millimeter in color, called Highway, HWY, with a few friends of mine, and we got the first answer print day before yesterday, and it should be ready next week. I think it's quite good too. It's about 60 minutes long. Essentially, there's no plot, no story in the traditional sense. A person, played by me, comes down out of the mountains and hitchhikes his way through the desert into a modern city, which happened to be LA, and that's where it ends. It's a very beautiful film. There were 4 guys that made it, me and 3 other guys, and we all just kind of made it together. It started out, I had an idea for a film about a hitchhiker who becomes a mass murderer, you know, the kind of thing that happens every year or so. Kind of like the Zodiac character, you know, except, you know, Starkweather and Billy Cook, and I mean, it happens every couple of years. And so we went out in the desert to start shooting it. While we were out there, the film took over and just went in its own direction, and became something a little different. The only thing that, you know, that was left from the original idea was the idea of a hitchhiker. The only reason I did it, to tell you the truth, is because I couldn't think of anyone else to do it, you know, and it was just as easy for me to do it. I might do some films, I don't know. I'm not that crazy about being an actor. I'd rather be a director or a writer, something like that. But, you know, if I had a chance, I'd probably do a few films. Why not? Shakespeare was an actor when he first came to London, you know? If I do anything in films, it would probably be this script called St. Nicholas that Michael McClure and I wrote based on his novel The Adept, which hasn't been published yet. It's a contemporary story about a couple of dope dealers that go to the desert to make a score. And if I do anything, it'll probably be the first project. I know people are going to, you know, call attention to that, you know, but this story was written before Easy Rider. Do you know, I read in Daily Variety yesterday, you know, Easy Rider was made for about $385,000. And the estimated gross so far, $50 to $60 million, he said in a religious hushed tone. $50 to $60 million, that's quite a profit margin, my dear. This is like breaks precedence all over the place because it's the first, essentially, you know, independent, low-budget feature to really clean up in the old marketplace. It's unusual. It's gonna open the scene up for a lot of people. Oh yes, I can go into any restaurant in town and order anything I want. And I don't have to go to 50-cent movies anymore either. I'll never stop. They can't stop me. Let me think. No, I'm just so greedy, you know, just the more I can get, the better, you know, just, my ambition is to have a whole bunch of gold bullion. Is that the proper terminology? Big gold bars, you know. I'd like to have a big gold bar, big chunks of gold, you know, just to have around the house. And, you know, well, that's their fault. They're probably spendthrifts, you know. It's like giving whiskey to an Indian. You know? Let's put it this way. I think with our, you know, with our economic system, you know, and tax structure and all that, I don't think it's possible ever to just retire and never work, you know. You know, because the economy keeps increasing. If you drop out of the economy, then it just passes you up, you know, in a couple of years, and you're left high and dry. I don't think it's possible to retire in a capitalistic society. I think, you know, I dig money because I've always said this. Money does beat soul every time. Not only that, it's a form of communication, and besides that, if you run into some good luck and you get some money, right, then I think you should just keep pouring it back into creative ventures. Just as soon as you get it, you know, don't go out and buy a bunch of diamond rings and stuff, you know, but pour it back into creative ventures, you know, that that are creating new things, and you can't ever go wrong, you know. Hey, listen, man, you're getting the benefit of my grand Irish wit all over the place. You wanna arm wrestle? Huh? Well, I won't be disdainful. Sorry if I was disdainful. Well, you know, it's like being married or being a member of a family. You know, there's always strife. You know, people that live together fight a lot. But I've noticed that we went through a period of kind of, it was really getting strained, and in the last few months, everything is really smoothed out. I think when you're creating well, when the music is going well, everybody's happy. It's only when, you know, when your creativity kind of dies off a little bit, then everybody starts feeling the strain, you know. But the relations are very good these days. I have to, well, you know, it's still up in the air right now, but I'll probably have to, there'll probably be a big trial, you know. And I guess the best thing would be just to, you know, I might even buy a suit, you know, to make a good impression on the judge and the jury and everything, you know. Suit and a tie. What kind of a suit? Kind of a conservative, dark blue suit. Not one of those paisley ties, but more of a, just, you know, I like instead of those narrow, those real thin ties, I like a big fat tie, you know, with a great big knot, or, you know. I think I'll get a suit and take a lot of tranquilizers and just try and have a good time. Maybe I'll keep a diary of the whole thing and publish it in Esquire or something. You know, my impressions of my hanging. Let's talk about something light. Kathy, what was I talking about just before they came in? I was, anybody have anything they want to talk about? How about,
Tell about your new movie.
I already did. How about
the film festival?
I already told them about that. How about, let's see.
Tell about the screenplay of Dental.
I already told them that. Let's see, how about... It's a funny thing. I've noticed that when people are joking, they're usually dead serious. And when they're dead serious, it's usually pretty funny. So I think anything you say means exactly what you say and its opposite. Are you hungry? Well, maybe we could order out for some sandwiches or some chicken delight or something. You're not hungry? How about you? Are you hungry? Oh, it's lunchtime. Oh, did you have breakfast? Hey, you should eat more. Well, you know, that's something that really bothers me. What's wrong with being fat? That's what I want to know. Why is it so onerous to be fat? I don't see anything wrong with fat, you know? I mean, I remember when I used to weigh 185 pounds. I'm the same height. I was the same height that I am now. I weighed 185 pounds. When I was going to college, and I had this food ticket at the cafeteria, and the cafeteria food is mainly all based on starch. You know, it's cheap food, right? And so I don't know what it was, but in order, I don't know, I just felt like I was, if you missed your meal, you just, you know, I just figured, well, I was getting screwed, right? If I missed a meal, I just blew it. So I'd get up at 6:30 every morning just to make breakfast, right? Eggs and grits and sausages and toast and milk. Then I'd go do a few classes, and I'd make it in there for lunch. Mashed potatoes. You know, every now and then they'd put a little piece of meat in something, you know. Then I'd go to a few more classes, and then I'd go to dinner, and it was more mashed potatoes. And so about 3 months later, I was 185 pounds. And you know what? I felt so great. I felt like a tank, you know? I felt like a large mammal, a big beast. When I moved through the corridors or across the lawn, I just feel like I could knock anybody out of my way, you know? I was solid, man. It's terrible to be thin and wispy because, you know, you could get knocked over by a strong wind or something, you know? Fat is beautiful. You want to compare biceps? Well, you know, it's in vogue, you know? I don't know, I must have been out of my mind to do it. Can you imagine doing that? Posing for a picture? Can you imagine? You know, and really looking in the camera and really posing? That's insane. I must have been out of my mind. If I had the whole thing to do over again, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't. I thought I knew what I was doing, you know. I thought, you know, I knew what I was doing. And then the horrible thing about a photograph is once it's done, you can't destroy it. It's there forever. So can you imagine when I'm 80 years old and I have to look at myself, you know, posing for these pictures and everything? It's, you know, it's too late. This guy's trying to put me in a bummer, you know? That's another thing, see? You know, talk gets around, crazy talk like that, what happens? You know? I mean, that's a difficult burden to bear, you know? It really is. Because we all know no one's any sexier than anyone else, right? Everybody's got the same equipment, unless, you know, biologically you got mixed up or something. We're all about the same. It's guys like you, man. It's the reporters, it's the press, people like that create this insanity, you know, that make up this stuff, and then people start believing it, you know. Well, I must admit that there were occasions when having a reputation like that did help me out in some tight situations. And plus I got to meet a lot of groovy ladies that otherwise I would, you know, they probably wouldn't even have noticed me, you know. So in that respect it was all to the good. Let's see. So many schools. I traveled around a lot as a child, and I went to so many schools. About one school, different school a year, or every year and a half, I'd go to a different one. I finished up at UCLA. No, I didn't learn too much. The only reason I did it was because I didn't want to go in the Army, and I didn't want to work, and school was fairly easy for me, so I just kept doing it. And that's the damn truth. If they have a good library, that's about it. It's all, you know, or unless you want to be an engineer or a scientist, something like that, I think you could learn a lot. You know, they have all the equipment and professors and all that, but I think the main key to education is just reading, basically. You could do the same thing in your own. Not too many, really. Mexico City, Canada, London, Frankfurt, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, and Stockholm. But most of the United States. London, they're very, very hip over there. And in Frankfurt, I noticed that they were quite rude. The people in Stockholm were nice. Mexico City, well, you know, rather boisterous. You know, they drink a lot and really, you know, yell. We're going to try and go to Japan for that expo thing, play there, and we're going to go to Australia. And I like traveling around. That's the best part of this business is, you know, you get to change your locale a lot. Kathy, could I have more coffee? Sure. Yeah, I'm finally starting to wake up. I'm doing some heavy stuff now. No, it was after I got out of college, and I wanted to see, I finished up in the film school because I wanted to make movies. So you know how difficult it is to break into the movie game. So I just kind of wandered around. I was living down at the beach in abject poverty. And just kind of, for no reason at all, I started writing some songs. They just kind of popped into my head. And I ran into Ray, who was at the film school also, and he'd been working in bands since he grew up in Chicago, and he'd been doing it for a long time. So I showed him some of the songs, and he said, hey, you know, let's get a band together. So we did. I suppose because, you know, the person that writes the songs ought to sing them because he's the one that, you know, must feel it more than anybody else. So since I was writing most of the songs, I just gradually became a singer. In Mexico, it's a unique problem because that place is a hotbed of political unrest. Do you know, I heard some stories down there that would curl your hair. Take this. These guys are going to school, you know, college. If one of their friends disappears, they don't see him for 2 weeks. They just write him off. They say, well, I guess they got him. Do you know, see, I think when we went down there, it was the anniversary of, the first anniversary a year earlier. Something like, the government heard that, it's when the Olympics were going on, the government heard the students were going to do a little demonstration, you know, a march, protest. So when the students showed up for the protest, there was an ambush waiting, and I think they slaughtered about 2,000 young students. And so, like that, it's a very, you know, bad place for students, or, you know, people against the government. You know, they don't, you know, they don't mess around. They just kill you. They go into your house at night and shoot you and your whole family. Of course, that's just hearsay. You know, I can't back that up with any photographs or anything. But that's what I heard. It's like a political football. You know, they let us sign up for a concert, and then about 2 days before we show up, the mayor or the sheriff or somebody, whoever's, wants to get his name in the paper, will try and cancel the show and get everybody all outraged, People like, parents that wouldn't even know who we were, all of a sudden they hear that, Sheriff Peabody says they shouldn't be allowed to perform. So, like that. It's just a political football. I told you we're the band you love to hate. I know I could write an American folk song. Something that would appeal to everyone. And everyone would say, gee, what a great guy. I put a lot of American eagles in it, and sagebrush, timber, boulders, rivers, mountains, prairies. Hey, why don't we, have you had breakfast yet or lunch?
Neither.
Well, let's go down to the garden district. It's not the studio, really. It's just, I don't know, I guess we thought we'd do things a lot better when we were rehearsing. And, not more comfortable. Yeah.
What did you do? Maybe take running while you're rehearsing?
Right. And then when we all feel one that we all think's good, we'll listen to it. And it's a lot cheaper and faster that way, too. Because you rent the equipment and you can use it whenever you want it. Just so you don't pay $1,000 a day. So you can run into a studio, right? This will be the first record we're actually doing without a producer. We use the same engineer that we've always had, Bruce Botnick. I don't know if he'll be called a producer or not, probably co-producer. So we're trying to get this erased because it's not good to have something like that on your record, man. It's just if something really serious happened, and then you'd have a record and it makes it a lot worse, And actually, we were acquitted because the stewardesses mistook me for someone else, so that was good. Oh yeah, sure. They were saying the person in such and such a seat was causing all this trouble, and then they all identified me as being in another seat. So they were just trying to hang me, because I was the only one that had a well-known face or something, so they were trying to get me for it. I don't know, I guess as an example of the people that behave in airplanes. The trouble with all these buses is, people that I know, friends of mine, think it's really funny and they like to believe it's true, so they accept it, and then people that don't like me want to believe it because it's an incarnation of everything they consider evil, so I get hung both ways, Anybody want a cocktail before you order? We're going to contend it on several grounds. But first of all, they never really proved anything except profanity, which we admitted all along, that there was profanity used in the performance. And we were going to attempt to prove that did not violate contemporary community standards in the city of Miami. And to do that, we were going to take the jury to see a lot of movies, like Woodstock, and Hair was playing in town at that time, and they they had nudity on stage every night, and they were allowing young people to go in of any age. And all the books that were available, even in school libraries, junior high school libraries, with four-letter words. So the judge refused to allow any investigation along those lines and limited it to a criminal action. Well, they brought on about 13 witnesses. Every witness was either a policeman who was working there that night or someone who worked for the city and happened to be there, or a relative of a policeman. In fact, that was their biggest witness, was a 16-year-old girl who was the niece of a police officer who got her and her date in free that night. They had thousands of photographs from many different people that were there, and there was no photograph of an exposure or anything near it. And the other charges, I think they just put in there to make it look more serious, simulated masturbation and oral copulation. Yeah, masturbation on myself and oral copulation on the guitar player. Which there's a picture of that in the inside sleeve of that Best Hits album. That was their big proof, That's a real lamb. That guy, Louis Marvin, the Moonfire. He happened to be down there. He travels around spreading his philosophy of nonviolence and vegetarianism. And he carried this little lamb around to demonstrate his principles. In other words, if you eat meat, you're killing this little lamb. So he gave it to me during the middle of the show, and I just held him for a while. It was really interesting that there was a lot of noise and a lot of commotion. It was almost deafening in the auditorium, but the lamb was breathing normally, almost purring like a kitten. It was completely relaxed. I guess what they say about lambs to the slaughter is true, they don't feel a thing. Anyway, the judge limited the defense's witnesses. We had 300 witnesses who were there, and we were going to parade them all in to get their side of it. He limited the defense to the number of witnesses that the prosecution brought on, which is an entirely arbitrary maneuver. But we had over 300 people that were willing to testify that they were there, didn't see anything of any of those alleged incidents. What it turns out that actually happened was a journalist happened to be there or heard about this concert, and the next day he went and wrote a sensational front page story about the concert, about inciting to riot, and the citizens became irate and began calling the police station, asking why this had been allowed to go on and why wasn't I arrested. And I'd gotten up and gone on to Jamaica for a holiday that had been planned down there. And so about 3 or 4 days after the whole thing, they swore out a warrant for me. So you can kind of see how the whole thing began. The only one we did during the trial went on for 2 months. Not really. They might have, but we just went ahead and did a few things. But actually, the only thing I did was to fly to the Isle of Wight for a day, and then I came right back. We could have done it, but really, we never knew from one day to the next when court was in session, and he changed it every day, so we never knew. So to have flown somewhere for a couple days, I really needed the weekends to rest up. It was kind of an ordeal. I think it was really a lifestyle that they were they were going after. I don't think it was me personally. I just kind of stepped into a hornet's nest. I had no idea that the sentiment down there was so tender. The audience that was there really enjoyed it. You know, it was, I think people reading about it in the paper, this distorted version, created a climate of hysteria. And then a few weeks later, they had a anti-indecency rally at the Orange Bowl with a famous fat comedian as MC. So I wasted a lot of time and energy on that thing, but about a year and a half of kind of a gnawing disquiet about it. But I guess it was a valuable experience because I think before the trial I had a very unrealistic schoolboy attitude about the American judicial system, and my eyes have been opened up a little bit. There were guys down there, black guys, that would go on each day before I'd go on, like for, it'd take about 5 minutes and they'd get 20, 30 years in jail, you know. If I hadn't had unlimited funds to continue fighting my case, I'd be in jail right now for 3 years. It's just, if you got money, you generally don't go to jail. It's about... I felt like a spectator, but I wouldn't have wanted to defend myself because I would have blown it, I'm sure. It's not as easy as it looks, you know. I didn't have to testify, but we decided it might be a good thing for the jury to see what I was like, because all they could do is look at me for 6 weeks or whatever it was. And so I testified a couple days. I don't think it meant anything one way or the other. I saw half of it, but I was so uncomfortable I couldn't sit through the rest of it. Not that I don't appreciate satire. I like satire, but it just hit too close to home, you know. It made me real edgy, so I had to get up and split. But I enjoy their work, especially that maze ritual they have on Sunday, the Liquid Theater. That's one of the most interesting things they do. I don't know very many of them personally, but I've been attending their things off and on for a couple of years, and I'm glad and amazed that they managed to keep going. I think that's great. I think people enjoy being in crowds. It gives them a feeling of power and security in a strange way. They like to rub up against hundreds of other people that are like them. It kind of reinforces their truth. It's just to be a focus for everyone's attention, because you have to have an excuse to mob together. You can't just, otherwise it'd just be, what would you call that? That would be a riot or something, wouldn't it? I mean, we never really had any riots. A riot's a more out-of-control, violent thing. We never had too much what I'd call a real riot. I think it also, it has something to do with swarming theory. The idea that in insect and animal species, when the food supply, the population starts outstripping the food supply, the animals or insects swarm together. It's a way of communicating and working out a solution, or making each other, signaling their awareness that there is a danger. And in nature, somehow a balance is worked out, and I think that's what, for example, in LA or New York, in many big cities, you feel crowded. You feel psychologically crowded and just physically crowded. People are getting very neurotic and paranoid. And I guess things like rock concerts are a form of human swarming to communicate this unease about overpopulation. I was trying to get everybody to do that about a year ago, and no one wanted to, and now they kind of want to, and I've totally lost interest. Although, I know it's a lot of fun, but I just don't have the desire to get up and sing much. I still enjoy music, but I don't really kind of lost my interest for it. The Highway's the only really film I did. The others were more I was actively involved in them, but they weren't really totally my film. But The Highway is, to a large degree. I always see films as a team effort, you know, except in rare cases. But yeah, I'd like to get Highway shown. I think maybe it might work on in educational television, NET. It's about the right length. You see, it's an uncommercial type film. It's too long for a short to play with another feature, and it's not a feature itself. 50 minutes. So it's an awkward length. I don't know. I think maybe educational TV might be a good spot for it. There's no story, really, no real narrative, except there's a hitchhiker who we don't see it, but then we later assume that he stole a car. And drives into the city, and then it just ends there. As he gets into the city, checks into a motel, and goes out to a nightclub or somewhere, and it just kind of ends like that. I had always been fascinated with a story about a hitchhiker who becomes a mass murderer. And I set out to make that film, but it turned into a different film, a much more subtle fantasy. Someday I'd still like to make that hitchhiker film, though, because I think it's a good one. I just meant that I think in art, but especially in films, people are trying to confirm their own existence. Somehow they seem more real. Somehow things seem more real if they can be photographed and, you know, if you can create a semblance of life on a screen. But, you know, those little aphorisms that make up most of the lores, if I could have said it any other way, I would have, you know. They're kind of to be mulled over and not taken too seriously, but it was, I did most of that book when I was at the film school at UCLA, and it was really a thesis on film aesthetics, because I wasn't able to make films then, so all I could do was think about them and write about them, and it probably reflects a lot of that. But then a lot of the passages in it, for example, about shamanism, turned out to be very prophetic several years later, because I had no idea when I was writing that that's what I'd be doing, but that's what it turned into. Really, what that book is a lot about is the feeling of powerlessness and helplessness people have in the face of reality, that they have no real control over events or their own lives, that something is controlling it. But the closest they ever get to it is on a television set. But in creating this idea of the Lords, it also, I think, came to reverse itself, and now to me the Lords means something entirely different. I couldn't quite explain it, but almost the opposite of that. You know, somehow the Lords are a romantic race of people who have found a way to control their environment and their own lives. They're somehow different from other people. I had a book on snakes and reptiles, and the first sentence of it struck me very acutely. It goes, reptiles are the interesting descendants of magnificent ancestors. And another thing about them is they're a complete anachronism. If every reptile in the world were to disappear tomorrow, it wouldn't really change the balance of nature one bit. They're completely arbitrary species, and I think maybe they might, you know, if any creature could survive another world war or some kind of total poisoning of the planet, I think somehow reptiles would find a way to make it. Also, we must not forget that the lizard and the snake are also identified with the unconscious and with the forces of evil. You know, they're the devil's gang. Reptiles are. And that piece, the celebration of the lizard, was kind of a invocation of dark forces. But it's all done tongue-in-cheek. I don't think people ever realize that it's not really serious, you know. It's just like if you play a villain in a Western, that doesn't mean that's you. You know? I mean, that's just an aspect that you choose to show. You know? So I don't really take that seriously. Also, you know, and on a much more basic level, I've just always loved reptiles, horned toads. I grew up in the Southwest for part of my life, and I used to catch horned toads and lizards, and of course snakes are. I still can't get too near snakes somehow. They still have kind of a. I mean, it's hard for me to pick up a snake and play with it. Some people can do it quite easily. But there's something deep in the human memory that responds strongly to snakes. You know, they're probably...
the childhood dreams and all those things, you know, in one form or another.
Even if you've never seen one, you have like a dragon, you know, St. George and the dragon. I think a snake just embodies probably everything we fear, you know. But also, you know, basically their skins are just beautiful, you know. I guess that's why they become so fashionable, and well, I think they always have been, you know. But it's interesting because that book was mainly written when I was very naive, so it wasn't something that was born out of you know, any great awareness of the universe or anything. It was a very naive little book, you know. Somehow, for me, it holds up, a lot of it. Well, it always amazes me that people think you're 2 years younger than you are, you know. I guess that's why you have to keep doing interviews. You know, it's like seeing baby pictures or something. It's kind of embarrassing and funny at the same time. The interviews, I've always said about what I thought, you know, but just people believe old press clippings or something, you know. And remember a couple years ago when all that stuff was going on, well, people still remember all that, you know. I think it fulfilled a need people had, you know, for some
some figure who would represent a lot of things, so they created this thing. I had a good time. You know, I think more than writing music and as a singer, any of that, I think my greatest talent was for, I had an instinctive knack for self-image propagation. You know, I was very good at manipulating publicity, just with a few little phrases like that, because having grown up on television and mass magazines and all that, I knew instinctively what people would attach onto, and so I just dropped these little jewels here and there, very innocently and seemingly innocently, and of course, you know, it was like just calling signals. You know? No, I think we were very timely. The music and some of the ideas are very timely. They seem kind of naive now, but I remember a couple of years ago, people were into some very weird things. You know, there was a high energy level, and you could say things like that and almost half-ass believe it. You know, whereas now it seems very naive. And no, I think it was a combination of good musicianship and timeliness. And we may have been one of the first groups to come along that were openly self-conscious about being performers. In other words, reflecting on our own career as it was happening. It's not that we were trend conscious. We were doing exactly what we would have done anyway, but it came at the right time when you could get away with expressing sentiments like that. But I'm sure we would have done the same thing anyway. Well, for example, the first album is not really socially conscious at all. It's just very universal, personal statements. And then each one got a little more socially aware, you know, of the whole landscape, and perhaps to the detriment of the music, I'm not sure. Although there were a couple of, I never thought of any of the songs as being political in that sense. They were more, really, they could, as we traveled around and played to large groups of people, then some of the words couldn't help reflecting the things that I ran into, you know, traveling around. That was mainly it. It wasn't any conscious program. But in answer to your original question, I think that probably the things we'll record now get back to the blues, essentially, is what we do best, is blues. And I think we may even do a couple old blues and some blues of our own. And so, just your basic blues. You know, it'll be good blues. It won't be like, it won't be like a guy with a guitar playing the blues. It'll be electric blues, you know, but blues nevertheless. I hope. You know, you never know. When you start an album, you have one idea, and it could end up entirely different. But that's what I'm going to push for. Is that's the music I enjoy doing the best. It's the most fun to sing. I like jazz also, but you don't need a singer really for jazz.
That would just cut you.
Yeah. But those guys really, they ought to do some instrumentals. I've always pushed for that, but they've been reluctant to do it. I wish they would. For three guys, you know, with a drummer and just two instruments, these guys put out a lot of music, you know, a lot of sound, and it's. Well, I like any kind of reaction I can get. So I enjoy it. Just anything to get, I guess, to get people to think, you know. I mean, if you can get a whole room
a whole club full of drunk, stoned people to actually wake up from it. I mean, you're doing something. Because that's not what they come there for. It's to just to lose themselves, you know. I got an instinctive feeling for the film media. I think I'll do pretty good at it. Well, see, I like that kind of thing because I've never thought that an audience should be as passive as they become, and so let's just say I think an audience should be an active participant in creating what's happening, and you can even do that with a film, you know. For example, it's up to you to close your eyes anytime you want, or get up and walk out for 5 minutes and come back, and that makes an entirely different movie, right? Than what a person would see if they just sat dutifully through it from beginning to end. We'd made this film that we thought was really neat, and no one wanted to distribute it or anything, so we just show it whenever we could. Because it was worth seeing, you know, and I'm glad we made it. It'll be a good document of that era. I think I may get a chance to make a film because of that notoriety. I'll probably get one chance, you know, and if it doesn't really make it, it'll be very hard to get another chance. But I think almost anybody can get one chance these days to make some kind of film. They always want a soundtrack or something, you know, or even have the audacity to want you to play a singer in a movie, you know, play yourself in a movie. So I'm not really interested in acting. It doesn't bother me that much. I kind of came along when rock and roll, the old rock and roll was the big thing, and like I guess a lot of people knocked me out. And then I discovered blues in college. I like that. And if I'm ever going to listen to anything these days, I like jazz. But man, there's just so much music. You can't. It's like swimming in a sea of marshmallows or something. You can't. The only thing I've heard is the things in Zabriskie Point is the beginning and the end, and they knocked me out. And I've heard a few. Oh, I heard them in Hyde Park. I happened to be in London when they did a free concert in Hyde Park. I could listen to them a lot. In fact, when I heard them and when I heard Miles a few times at the Manhole and at the Isle of Wight, I couldn't believe that he got it together to do the Isle of Wight. And I mean, I thought it was good. This new sound he has now. When I heard those two things, I said to myself, well, see, I'm not a musician, so I wouldn't know how to. All I knew was there was something there, and I figured if we couldn't go in that direction, you know, and get complex like that, then best for us to do what we can really do best, which is blues. I don't think we'll ever. I don't know. I guess Pink Floyd's been together quite a while doing that kind of music, haven't they? They're not an overnight thing. Of course, Miles is, you know, music's been his whole life, so I guess you can't get into that thing overnight. But I have a friend, a girl. That's married to a friend of mine, and she only sings for friends. And I think if she ever performed publicly or on record, she'd be one of the great singers. I won't say any more about it, but there are nothing like a good female singer, you know. There are not that many. I mean, the ones that I like personally. I don't actually don't know a thing about jazz. But for me, what it means is a kind of music that's based on improvising, in which you start out a set and you have a
an idea of the steps that it might go through, but it could turn it into something different. And when I see a, to me there's a show where they know exactly what they're going to do every step, and they come out and do a lot of songs. And then there's another type of music where you can feel the musicians reaching, and that's the kind that I appreciate.